black babies ain't being killed, to make sure there's money invested in our community, well, tell them you're the best racist ever. I mean, and somebody, please do me a favor. Can somebody tell Donald Trump how to be a racist? Because he's not doing a good job.
Yo, Black Lives Matter! Actually, all lives matter. That's racist. Black Lives Matter!
One day later.
That's racist. All lives matter!
There's $24 billion here and there, $500 million there. Some people want to be paid back, and members of the public are wondering, why are we suffering when you have all of this vast wealth? Those are legitimate concerns.
Well, I think you're right about reparations in terms of if people want it, though, what they need to do is you always need to go back to the beginning of a supply chain. Where was the beginning of the supply chain? That was in Africa, and when...
Ooh, that was an... Okay.
You study today's black culture is trash. Ain't nothing positive about black culture. We're not highlighting spelling bee winners. We don't talk about the newest black business that's doing good. When you go on social media, you look at some of the most trending videos and trending topics. It ain't black empowerment. It ain't uplifting black people. When you look at our movies, we ain't got no black heroes. Black culture has black propaganda. Hitler used propaganda to get the Germans to turn on the Jews. We use propaganda for our culture. We propagate pimps, gangsters, killers, womanizers, robbers, deceit, being unfaithful. We got some propaganda, homie, that's brainwashing.
I am a pastor. I'm a man of faith. I have a profound reverence for life. Well, I want to save your life.
I have to respond to this very quick because he told me Black Lives Matter. And if you think about it, Senator, in Atlanta, Georgia, there's more black baby that is aborted than anything. So if Black Lives Matter, why are you not protecting those babies? And instead of aborting those babies, why are you not baptizing those babies?
The Woman King is a modern-day version of D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. The 1915 silent film was used to promote racism through its false narratives. The Woman King does the same thing. It lies and misappropriates history, leaving the viewer into thinking that the Dahomey tribe eradicated slavery from within their ranks. They did not. Instead, they continued on with impunity. Yet, people still make excuses. Some people refuse to put any blame whatsoever on Africa for their huge part in the slave trade. Now, why is that? Black Lives Matter! Oh, did you see the new Candace Owens film on BLM? Nah, man, you a sellout. Oh, you mean BLM raising nearly $80 million, but almost zero money going to the black community? Building several lavish multi-million-dollar properties in affluent all-white neighborhoods and investing $32 million in Wall Street? You mean that kind of a sellout? Oh, man, Black Lives Matter! Despite Roots' claim that during the heyday of the massive slave trade from West Africa to America, a white man was more likely to develop malaria in Africa than catch slaves. The average life expectancy of a white male in sub-Saharan Africa's interior at the time was less than a year. Men from Europe or the Western Hemisphere arrived on Africa's coast, bought slaves, and fled as quickly as they could. For the slave trade to be possible, they needed massive help from Africans. Because we do not want to be numbers, we will defend the value of the human being. Every single human being, because each of us has a unique genetic code that is unrepeatable. And like it or not, that is sacred. We will defend it. We will defend God, country, and family. For those things that disgust people so much, we will do it to defend our freedom. Because we will never be slaves and simple consumers at the mercy of financial speculators.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
This is what Reagan later meant by "we are a shining city on a hill."
I also want to close with one message to the Democrat Party. end this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class. So have the guts to step up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate. Biden should step aside, end his candidacy now, so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else. All right, just tell us the truth so we can have an honest debate.
All right, that was Vivek Ramaswamy during the presidential debates for the Republican nomination. Of course, we know that Trump took that pretty handily. But the point is, and the reason why I want to lead with that was simply because I wanted to show that we all sort of knew that Joe wasn't going to make it to the finish line. We just knew that he was not going to be able to hold it together, whether physically, mentally, or what have you. Not only that, with his polling numbers pretty much in the tank, we knew that at some point they were going to have to replace him. It's just a matter of saving face. Now, I won't get into what I really feel because this is on YouTube and Facebook, but I may stick and do an extra time on Rumble and give my true assessment on the whole thing. So my name is Kyle. Welcome to the Kyle Suggs Show. This is my live stream that I'm going to do for the next hour or so, talking about Kamala Harris being endorsed by Joe Biden to be the next presidential nomination or nominee for the Democrat National Convention or Committee come this August. So a little bit of background on me, because if you've been following the channel for, 4 to 5 months, we've been dealing a lot with culture, particularly with sports. We've been trying to build a podcast. My friend and I, Greg, have been putting together this podcast, which is about sports and about the culture of that and how old school sports is better than what's going on now. And so we've been building that and kind of putting a lot of our other stuff kind of behind. Some of the shorts that we've been doing for the past year or so, which have gotten millions and millions of views, have also been put on the back burner. But because we're in an election cycle and because of my background, which I'm about to get into, I'm going to cover this going forward. We had a live stream with Nicole Kaufman about the assassination attempt on President Trump. And she, as a clinical therapist, licensed clinical therapist and mental health professional, she was able to give some good insight into his psyche and what he has to look forward to or dealing with that sort of trauma. So take a look at that particular live stream that's out there right now. And the reason why I bring that up is simply because I wanted to say we're moving more and more to a political agenda, at least for the next 4 to 5 months, because the election is only about an hour and a half, about 106 days away. So my background, I've been involved in politics for a very, very long time, been very much involved with the Republican Party. However, I didn't start out that way. I was a Democrat big time growing up in Washington, D.C., was a volunteer for the Marion Barry mayoral campaign. And so in college, I was pretty radical. I was BLM before BLM was actually BLM. In fact, in some ways, I was more so. I was super duper radical. Went to a lot of different events. Naeem Akbar, Leonard Jeffries up in New York, Farrakhan a couple times, Khalid Muhammad. I was there at Camden Auditorium at Howard University that night when he gave that very controversial speech. I was there that night when the Washington Post basically said it was an anti-Semitic fest. It was a really, really interesting time in the early 90s. But how the things have flipped on its head now. And since 9/11 and since some other things I've learned about, I realized that, hey, it's really the Democrats, it's really the liberals, it's really the commies, it's really the socialites, socialists, the so-called progressives who have been behind the whole thing all along. And we can get into that too in another broadcast. But the point being is that I got into the RNC circle. I was involved with the Bush campaign, with the McCain campaign, with everything for the most part. Got a little disenfranchised and ended up doing this show or this particular channel once Trump became the viable candidate for the Republican Party. And see, for myself personally, I said I was a national committee man for the Young Republicans. I led a chapter in North Carolina for Young Republicans, grew it to the third largest chapter in North Carolina, Treasury Committee, Hall of Fame committees. I've been elected by Executive Board for North Carolina unanimously. and did some blogs and some other things too. Had a pretty successful Black Republican for Bush blog back in 2004-ish. So just a little bit of background what I've done. And I've done a lot with running campaigns. I ran 2 campaigns. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful. They were statewide campaigns for a House race for a friend of mine. And I learned a lot about that, took training, did Newt Gingrich, and all of his resources that he offered. But again, I want to put this out there just for the record so you know when I go forward and talk about this and give my opinion on this, I have some sort of standing with you guys. I also had a video where I predicted Trump would win Michigan and Pennsylvania the night before the 2016 election based on what I was seeing, and I was right. I called Trump to win when no one was calling him to beat Hillary Clinton. And so with that, let's get into what we're going to talk about. So first of all, welcome everybody here. Let me see if any comments I hear. And if I do see some, I will say that. We have WJ who's on, Clinton Alexander, and welcome you guys, and David Haithcock. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. And if you want your comment to show on the screen, just put something out there and I'll flash it on the screen. If you don't want it to show up on the screen and be public record, I will look for an asterisk or a do not display type of thing. Let me know that you don't want to show it and I won't show it. But if you're going to just do a comment, I will put it on the screen, and I'll also censor too if I see some things as well. So obviously I will do that as well. All right. So crazy day, crazy week, crazy month. Let's go back to the Trump nomination that happened last week at Wisconsin, right? That was Wisconsin, Milwaukee, right? Wherever it was. It was in Wisconsin. And the RNC had a very, very good convention. I didn't even watch hardly any of it. I watched the last day, the last speech. I watched some of the speeches, after the fact. But in contrast, in 2020, if you go back on this channel, you'll see we did extensive live stream coverages of all 4 days of the RNC convention. We covered everything, and I watched it real time with you guys. And I think it was about 4 hours each day, so about 12 hours coverage of the RNC 2020. We didn't do anything like that this time. I'm a little jaded. I'm a little cynical. And so I'm just going to cover stories as I think they need to be covered. So with this happening here, with Joe Biden dropping out of the race, this is one of the most monumental events politically in American history. In our lifetime, there hasn't really been a lot of things that have happened politically that are really outrageous or different. I'll go through some of the ones that in my lifetime that I've been a part of. It was the Reagan assassination attempt. That was major. I was in DC at the time. That's where I'm from. That was all over the place when Reagan was shot. And then later on, you have I think it was 94 was the Republican Revolution when Bill Clinton was in his first term, and then in comes Newt Gingrich and the contract with America, and the Republicans took the House and I believe the Senate. Maybe it was just the House. It was the House. Maybe it was both. I don't remember. But it was the House for sure for the first time in like 50 years. And that was monumental. Then you had Florida, right? You had Florida election 2000. That was crazy, right? That was a really close race. At that time, I was actually a staunch Democrat. I remember where I was. They called the race for Al Gore. And I went to bed. And I woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And they had stopped the counting because Florida was having some issues. If you remember correctly, they had paper ballots, but because the way the machines were, some of the ballots didn't go all the way through. They were called chads or half chads, and they didn't punch all the way through. So legally, was that a vote or was it not a vote? So it went to a total recount, and eventually went to the Supreme Court, who eventually stopped the counts. Jeb Bush was the Florida governor at the time, who actually happened to be the president's brother. A lot of controversy there. And so Bush was he didn't have a mandate. Let's put it that way. And then, of course, 9/11 happened a few months later, and then the whole world goes into chaos. So that happened, and then you have, I guess, Obama becoming president, and that was pretty huge. And I would even put in there Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton came in there as an outsider, totally. He was not supposed to get the nomination, but he is such a master politician. He knew what he was doing, and he just stayed around, hung around. Very similar to the way John McCain did. He just hung around. He just spent minimal amount of money, didn't do anything to really get him out of the race, and then he was the last man standing. Bill Clinton did sort of the same thing, but he had more of a political nature about himself, and he was very charismatic. Went on Arsenio Hall playing the saxophone, and so he got that soul vote, and there he ended up beating, it was George H.W. Bush, who said, read my lips, no new taxes, which he was true about. He just raised the old taxes. And the war in Iraq, the first one, he lost a lot of goodwill there. He had a lot of popularity, but then when he started doing some other things, globalist nature, Clinton was able to take advantage of that and defeat him. And so that was a big thing there. And of course, Trump is probably the next biggest thing after Obama. And so, but those are pretty big. But I think when you're dealing with Florida 2000, you're dealing with Reagan being attempted being assassinated, and then you have Biden dropping out of the race. I don't remember that ever happening before. We're going to talk about 1968 and how that played out a little bit in the latter part of the show. So what I want to talk about right now, particularly, is just go over the polling of where we are with Kamala Harris. There's some polling that's come out. I have some screenshots I'm going to show you, and I have some video clips I'm going to show you as well. And so let me just put some stuff together here and see what I have to show you. And let me just see if I have the right order here, because I want to do this the right way. So just today, I found out about this whole thing, and it was very, very interesting. I was actually in church at the time, and my wife showed me. She said, yeah. So she showed me her watch, her Apple Watch, and it said that Joe Biden dropped out of the race. And I didn't expect him to actually do that. I didn't expect him to do that at all. I expected him to stay in. But what surprised me was the Democrats' veracity in terms of their, I guess their determination to get this guy removed. And I guess I underestimated what the Biden so-called presidency really even means. And I think what that means is, it means that globalism is what's most important here. Because Trump, and if you know anything about Trumpism versus globalism, Trumpism comes out of the notion of nationalism. It's the same type of nationalism that came up after World War II. Actually, more or less World War I, where you had the Ottoman Empire, you had the Palestinian state trying to be nationalized, you had Germany wanting to be a national state, Italy wanted to be a national state. We had a decoupling of empires that were being put together from other conglomerates, wanting to have a cultural identity of themselves. If you look at the Jewish nation, it was called Zionism. If you look at Germany, they have their own nationalism as well. And so what that simply means is that people were their country first. Just like we say America first, they would say Germany first. They would say Italy first. They would say England first. And all it means is we're going to protect the interests of our citizens. We're going to protect our borders so those citizens can be safe and secure, and our culture can be intact, that the foundations of our particular nation, its interests, values, and principles will be intact, and that anyone who comes in are going to come in on our terms. They're going to be coming in, and they're going to give something for us and allow us to be bigger and better, not worse. Okay, we're not going to take in people who are going to tear our nation down culturally, economically, spiritually, politically, what have you. And so Trumpism flies back to that sort of mindset. We have a globalist mindset which basically says we're going to have open borders. And what does that mean? It basically means that we all can come together. We can have international trade amongst other companies in other countries around the world, so that we can share resources and dependencies, so that we're more together, like we're one world kind of government, one big happy go lucky family. But it doesn't really work that way. What ends up happening is you have these factions come into place, and then you have people who want to keep that power, and then they evoke certain things to happen that allow them to keep their power, like wars and all kinds of things that happen. Because globalism is about, well, an elite group, a bunch of oligarchs, so to speak, who want to maintain power for themselves. And one thing I like about this channel is I get to talk about America a lot. I get to talk about the founding principles of this country. I get to talk about how this country was founded out of the principles that man was given his and her rights from a creator outside of time, space, and matter, who gives these rights, and those rights can be taken from us. And so that was a principle that was coming out of people like John Locke, and before him, other people too. And it was codified in our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our I'm trying to think of the other piece of document there as well. I can't think of it right now. But in those particular foundations, that's what we are, and that's where we've come from. And so having that sort of mindset leads itself that we can have a nation like we have now to actually better the world. Because if you look at way back when, there was something called the Magna Carta. It was a agreement where you had the nobles and the oligarchs, whatever. They kind of got together and went against the king and said, hey, king, I know we're citizens, but we're noble citizens. How about we have an agreement where we can actually have something where we have rights of ourselves? That's really the first time in history that I know of where that actually happened. And then it went to another level when the American Revolution came around, because now it was just any person, regardless of your background. And so I like talking about this kind of stuff about America, because it talks about how that contrasts globalism, who doesn't care about that, so to speak. They want to bring us back to the time pre-Magna Carta, where it's a bunch of elites, oligarchs, bureaucrats, who basically say, you're not going to own anything, and you're going to like it. You're going to do what we say. You're going to like it, and we're going to carve up the world for ourselves because it's our world. You guys are just a squirrel trying to get a nut. And so Trump says, no, we don't want that. We want to be self-determined. That's really what this is really all about. And so I'm going to play a clip here. And if I can pull, I'm going to play a clip here. This is actually, okay, let's just step back a little bit. Okay, so Joe Biden basically said, okay, I'm not, for the sake of the party and the sake of other things too, I'm going to step down and I'm going to endorse Kamala Harris, who is my vice president. Okay, now we all know Kamala Harris. She's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And I was sort of hoping that would be the case. I think Joe Biden, quite frankly, would be a little harder to beat than Kamala, even as inept as he is and as, what he is. I think he would be harder to beat, slightly harder to beat than Kamala Harris. And the primary reason for that is the mantle of incumbency. Now, I'm not sure if this is the first time in history that we have two incumbents going head to head. I know Grover Cleveland, I believe he was the one who went 9 consecutive terms. I'm not sure if his second term, whatever, he went against a former president. I don't remember. But if he wasn't, then this was the first time in American history that we've seen that. Where we have President Trump, who had 4 years, starting in 2016, and we had Biden, who was president in allegedly 2020. So with Biden, we can see a stark contrast, right? A stark contrast between the 4 years prior, where we actually could afford gas, where we could actually, go outside without getting shot in the street because we don't have illegals running amongst, or even something just as simple as knowing which bathroom to go into, or wanting to keep pornography out of the classrooms and out of our public school libraries. And so, or maybe can we at least leave out of a country like Afghanistan with some dignity, not leave billions of dollars of equipment out there, leaving Americans and foreign nationals stranded and killed because we cut tail and ran, like in Saigon, wherever it was in Vietnam. Maybe it was Saigon, I don't know where it was. Maybe it was Saigon. The helicopters had left the embassy. And so, guys, I mean, that's a stark difference. But even with that, Biden has the mantle of incumbency. If you look at political elections, the incumbent, as a campaign manager, I can say this, the incumbent has the much easier job, all right? The incumbent almost always wins elections. And so if you have two incumbents, well, then that's kind of a wash. Now it just comes down to, who do you like better? Now, with Kamala now in the place of Joe, she does not have that mantle of incumbency. And what makes the incumbency so difficult to overcome, and this is from Campaign School 101, is the fact that you have to convince the people that voted for this guy before were wrong. And now you have to convince them that not only were they wrong, they should vote for the other person they probably wouldn't have voted for before, because this is a general election. That's the rub. That's what's very difficult to win as an incumbent. And so now Trump has that advantage. And let's look at some poll numbers here, but I'm going to actually pull up, let's do the poll numbers first. Let's do the poll numbers first. I have those right here. Let's take a look at this guy here. All right, so this is basically Trump versus Harris. This is from Real Clear Politics, this is fresh data. But according to Real Clear Politics, as of Tuesday, which was a few days ago, 6 days ago, Trump leads Kamala Harris by 2.6 points. And key findings here, the 82% overall approval among Black voters. I think that number will go down. Well, 82% is pretty low for her, actually. I think it'll go down. I think Black men will definitely turn away from Kamala Harris for many reasons. The number of people that she incarcerated in California when she was out there, that she just locked them up for political expediency. And so 16-point lead among Hispanic adults, that's 56 to 40. That's not that great either. 8-point lead among women, and that's about right. However, Trump holds a narrow lead overall with a 1.9 margin, according to Real Clear Politics, slightly better than his margin against Joe Biden. So he's polling better against Kamala. And so let's take a look at this video here. If I can pull it up in time, because my screen somehow is lagging. But I'm going to pull this up. Let's cancel that. Let's bring up AOC first. AOC had something to say about Kamala Harris, and this is something about dealing with the disloyalty within the Democrat Party. And this is going to lead a little bit into what I want to talk about in 1968, where the DNC was totally into disarray. It was a turbulent time, and that was in Chicago in August. And this DNC is in Chicago, and it's in August. And LBJ, back then, did not seek a nomination. He did it in March. He basically said, I'm not going to rerun in March. So he gave the party a little bit more time. But Joe Biden did it in August, much, 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 much later. But there's definitely some echoes, some parallels to that convention, potentially, to what's going to happen in August.
And I'm going to say what a lot of these folks aren't saying. I'm just going to say it. If you think that there is consensus among the people who want Joe Biden to leave, that they will support Kamala, Vice President Harris, you would be mistaken. And I'm going to say that because if they're going to come out and say all their little things on background off the record, but they're not going to be fully honest, I'm going to be honest for them. I'm in these rooms. I see what they say in conversations. A lot of them are not just interested in removing the president. They are interested in removing the whole ticket.
And that is AOC there. And as we know, let me put this back to mine. I'll just keep talking right now. This thing's locked up. So that was AOC talking about how there's no loyalty right now with the Democrats for the ticket, that they just don't want Kamala Harris. And what I've heard from other people say is that they do not also want with the donors, that is, don't want Kamala Harris either. And they are just super duper worried that they are somehow just not going to be able to beat Trump, especially after what happened on the 13th of July with the assassination attempt. Let's take a look at this video here that I pulled up here. I'm going to kind of go through this. It's a video of the polling numbers here. So let's take a look at this. So here we have the polling number. Trump with Biden was actually up 52% to 47%. It's +2. National poll, independents. He had about a 10-point lead in independents, and that was absolutely incredible to see. Now, again, this interactive polls, and slightly this is better than what. Well, actually, Kamala Harris is actually polling worse than that. And here we have the CBS YouGov poll on June 5th. Biden was up +2. In July 2nd, +6 for Trump. In July 16th, it was +10 for Trump. And now you have Trump versus independents, again, 54 to 43%. 12 net point swing towards Trump since June 5th. And see, this is exactly why the Democrats were actually in utter panic mode. Utter panic mode. And here you have trending politics. Breaking: Trump crushes Biden-Harris in first major shooting poll. Here you have political pollings: Trump +6. You have Trump +8 versus Harris, and it just gets worse and worse. This is from Steve Turley, his site. He has great stuff there. And so here you have a political map here with this is with Trump looking at 326 going head to head with Biden. So this would be, so all of the pink ones would be Nevada, which is crazy because Trump's leading in Nevada. He lost that, I believe, and Arizona, another one. But these states here that I think are going likely or leaning Republican, these particular states here are border states. Yeah, and I think Nevada and Arizona are really being hit hard with illegal immigration. We have literally millions of people coming across the border. It's astronomically high. You have Georgia now looking like it's out of range. I have a number for that against Kamala coming up here. North Carolina, where I am, Trump is not going to lose North Carolina. He is not going to lose North Carolina. And right now, Trump is actually leading in Virginia, of all places, where a state that Republicans hadn't won since Bush back in 2004, I believe. And so now you have Minnesota maybe in And so looking again at this, let's pull up another video here. Let's pull up some more polling data. That'd be better. Actually, this is Georgia here. So here we have Georgia, where Donald Trump is actually leading Kamala Harris in head-to-head by 5 points, which is absolutely incredible, because Georgia, to me, is one of the states that really concern me for the simple fact that it has a high Black population, and because sorry, guys. And so Georgia is a huge state for Republicans because if you look at the Electoral College map, you actually have to have Georgia. I mean, there's no other option really within reason to lose Georgia and still be able to pull it off. But if you pull in some of the blue wall states like, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, these are the urban states that have traditionally gone to Democrats. And one thing we've seen happen with globalization is we've seen what's happened, that jobs have been going overseas. You go through any Midwestern town, you go to King of Prussia, you go out west, you go to some of these towns now, and you see factories that are boarded up. You see the resemblance of a vibrant town no longer there, and you wonder what happened. Well, Ross Perot, who ran in 2000, he ran in 92, I believe. Yeah, he ran in 92, and he had this thing about, he was an entrepreneur. He had a IT company or computer company. I think it was over EDS, I believe, mainframe or computer, whatever. Anyway, he built that, but he wanted to get into the race. He was like a Trump before Trump. And he was saying, look, NAFTA, which is the North Atlantic Trade Association or Federation, whatever it is, which was going to be shipping jobs into Mexico. It's that whole globalist type of initiative. And he said there would be a big sucking sound. And the sucking sound would be jobs going overseas to other countries, and it would dry up our country, our manufacturing prowess. And that's what we saw. And so we saw these towns die out, these towns that were FDR Democrats, who were Truman Democrats, who were Kennedy Democrats. These guys, these people, these families voted because they thought that the Democrat Party was for the unions, they were for the common man, the everyday person, in contrast to the country club Republicans, the Calvin Coolidges, the Eisenhowers, and not that the Eisenhower was necessarily bad, but the image of the party was for the country club. These people who were affluent and establishment and didn't really have the regular Joe in mind. And so that process of decades long of abandonment opened the door for someone like Trump, who was so polarizing that the Democrats didn't see that by going against Trump and anything that Trump said, going against that would automatically push him more to those voters and push the Democrat Party more and more to the far left, the anti-individual, the anti-union worker, the anti-everyday blue-collar type worker, family man, and push them more to a socialist class, more radical class, a more woke class. And now that void was taken over by Trump and his MAGA agenda, his Make America agenda, absolutely refashioned the party in his own image. When he came in 2016, he didn't have that. The majority that he had in the House and the Senate for Republicans were all pretty much establishment Republicans. They weren't going to back him because they thought in their minds, the Paul Ryans, those guys, the John McCains, those guys, the Mitt Romneys, and those guys. Those people were thinking, okay, he's a flash in the pan. No one's going to take him seriously. Give him 4 years. We'll get back to the status quo of the Republican Party that we've been doing, basically shafting the American citizen, the American voter, the conservative voter, even though 2 times in a row in midterms, the Tea Party came on with an agenda, but was never really implemented, and people felt like they were being lied to by their own party. We realized that the Republican Party was nothing more than a different wing on the same bird that has a Democrat on the other wing. Same party. It was very frustrating, and which is why I said earlier, I left the Republican Party because I was disenfranchised. But it was only until I saw Trump and his MAGA agenda, his America First agenda, his stick it to the man agenda, his common sense agenda, his come on, man. We have been wanting a candidate like that for years. You go back and look at Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That was 1930. What year was that? Same year as Wizard of Oz, whatever year that was. Frank Capra. That was a guy who was honest and tried to go to Congress and do the right thing. He was influenced by PACs and lobbyists and special interests and congressmen to get him to do something else he didn't want to do, which is against his principles. We saw Bulworth with, I think it was Warren Beatty, a film which basically, he was basically telling the truth. And that whole shtick, that whole type of politician we've been looking for a long time. And then when it finally comes to us, once in several generations, many people didn't see it for what it is, and they bought into the media mantra that, this guy's a racist. Even though, he just gave Jesse Jackson millions of dollars for a building fund, a building site. And so he was given an award by the Rainbow Coalition, not to mention with Al Sharpton and many other people that he had been involved with business-wise, employed. His contracts were upward of 25% Black builders who were actually building those apartment complexes and sky rises down in New York during the 80s. People forget all that. They forget all the about 100 rap songs that have Trump in it, that they like the guy. So obviously he wasn't racist, but if you don't think, and unfortunately our education system doesn't teach people to really think, it teaches them to think what to think and to knock over whatever the media tells them to think. And in doing so, Trump was this big animal, this big monster. And so that's the sad thing about all this, is that with Kamala Harris, with the voting electorate the way it is, with people only caring about, their entertainment and and their food, bread and circus, that term that goes back to the Roman days, where as long as they're entertained and get some food and get their Xbox on, get their their reality shows on, any sports that they're watching on TV, any movies, whatever entertainment, they're fine, and they don't think about it. They don't read. They don't understand the Constitution. They don't understand the Bill of Rights, and they don't understand what's at stake. That every generation has to fight to retain those rights. It isn't handed to you. Every generation you have to fight for it. And we did a live stream. I basically said every 80 years, it was basically 4 times, or actually 3 times, in American history, where we pretty much had things gone a certain way, we could have lost what we have even today. And that would have been 1776 with the crossing in Delaware and the Battle of Princeton. After that would have been the Civil War, particularly I would say Gettysburg, I would say Vicksburg, right in the same time frame. And then I would say later 80 years from there, I'd say World War II, particularly the Normandy invasion at D-Day, and I would also throw in Midway if you want to throw in the specific theater of war as well. Any one of those things gone wrong, this country is a lot different than it is now. And so now, guess what? From Midway and D-Day, we're about 80 years away from that. And when we did that show, Trump hadn't been attacked yet. So I said on that live stream that there was something that's going to happen that was going to codify this 80-year period. And I believe it was that particular assassination attempt. So now it's our generation now. It's our time to step up and deliver. And the founding fathers and many women as well gave their lives, sacrificed so much for us to be in a position where we can defend what's here. And I believe this particular battle that we have now is just as challenging as World War II. It's just as daunting as Christmas Day, where George Washington decides to invade the Hessians that one cold New Jersey night, and Delaware night. And so just as critical as Gettysburg, just as critical as the siege at Vicksburg. We're at a time now, guys, that this is serious, and I would hate to talk to my grandkids and them ask me, "So where were you? What did you do?" I saw what great-great-great-grandmother did. I saw what people before them did. I saw what Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass. I saw what those guys did. I saw what every other generation fought for and did. What did you guys do? And so that's one of the things that kind of keeps me up at night. So, and this is what we're dealing with. This is Kamala Harris. And I can't play this whole thing because it's just too painful to watch. This is essentially, well, you'll see for yourself.
Imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What we can see, what we believe can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be
unburdened by what has been.
Please.
What can
Sorry. It's a 4-minute clip. I cannot deal with that anymore. This is what we're dealing with, guys. This is what we're dealing with. Here's an ad that the Trump campaign put out right after the announcement of Kamala Harris.
Was in on it. She covered up Joe's obvious mental decline.
Our president.
Let me start over from scratch. Here we go.
Kamala was in on it. She covered up Joe's obvious mental decline.
Our president is in good shape, in good health, tireless, vibrant, and I have no doubt about the strength of the work that we have done.
But Kamala knew Joe couldn't do the job, so she did it. Look what she got done. A border invasion. Run away.
I like how they... Did you see that? I've done some political ads, I haven't drafted any political ads, but I did some analysis on it. But look at that. They blurred out the presidential seal on the podium. I just caught that. That's good stuff right there. Yeah.
Look what she got done. A border invasion. Runaway inflation. The American dream dead. They created this mess. Kamala owns this failed record. Make America Great Again Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So that's a great ad because I like it because it basically, and as a political analyst, as a political strategist, what you want to do is you want to pin the person to the particular issues that you hate. And so by tying Kamala Harris directly to Joe Biden is fabulous. I said before, she does not have the mantle of incumbency. So people are going to have to say, you know what? I'm going to vote for her over a guy that I had money in my pocket when my 401k was kicking tail. When there was peace around the world, there wasn't a U.S. soldier killed for 2 years. There was, all these things that were going on that he had promised he was going to do, deregulation, and all these things that were happening, him going to see Putin, him going across the demilitarized zone in North Korea, the first president, I believe, I don't know how long, if not ever, to cross over into North Korea and talk to Kim Jong-il and all that stuff. So, or Un, whatever. And so you're going to have to convince people that person I said before, in that clip before, is more viable than the person that you knew from only 4 years, or only in this case, 5 years ago. So yeah, I don't know how you can do that with a straight face or with a clean conscience. I just don't know. But the fact that she had one thing to do for the most part, and her job was to border. And I remember when she was finally went down there, it was just a photo op. She didn't actually do anything, but it took her months to finally go down there after pressure and pressure and pressure. And the one thing she's in charge of is the one thing that she utterly failed on. But what's also brilliant about this particular ad is that it ties her not only to a role that she was responsible for, but actually puts in her own words the fact that she knew that Joe was incompetent and was covering up that incompetency, and therefore taking the reins of the presidency and failing. So it's in some ways, the ad is actually putting the incumbency onto Kamala, which is a risky thing to do, frankly, because of what I just said before. But they're taking the actual notion, I believe, this is my opinion, the Trump consultants and whomever are taking the notion that giving her the incumbency is risky because you don't want to do that, but the country is so messed up that you can still pin it on her as if she is responsible, and then double down on that by the fact that she knew that he was incompetent and wasn't able to do his job and lied about it. So it's a very, very brilliant ad, I must say. Let me show you this poll here. That show you the one from Georgia. I may have, yeah, I think I showed you that. So in Georgia, I mentioned that to you already. So I think we're clean there. Let me see if I have any more clips to show you, and then I'm gonna move into some questions here on the board, and then I'm gonna go into the analysis about 1968 and how this could be a similar type of deal. 68 was a very turbulent year, one of the most turbulent years in American history. And I rank it up there with 1864. That was the last year of the Civil War, or close to it at least, where Lincoln was about to be removed from office. He was about to lose the election of 1864. He was going up against a guy named George McClellan. It's a former general of his. And he was going to lose that because people were getting really, really tired of the war and the amount of lives that were being lost. And they just didn't have confidence in Abraham Lincoln in his vision. He had 2 years before tried to change the narrative of the war to be less of states' union into the abolition of slavery. Even at that point, it was enough. By the time summer was rolling around in '64, it was very, really, really desperate time. It took Grant and Sherman together to basically have a war of attrition in the various areas, Cold Harbor and so forth, and then have Sherman move himself into Atlanta and on into the sea from there, Savannah into South Carolina. And so that ended up turning the war around. But the point is that's a very, very desperate time in this country. And 1968 was another one of those times as well. So before I get into that, I'm going to go over any comments we have here, and then I'm going to take a quick 2-minute break and set up for the next segment where I'm going to get into the election of 68 and how crazy that was. So Clinton Alexander seems to think that Trump will be the next president. I sure hope so. WJ says, not a fan of Biden buying out or leaving. I know most of the DNC candidates are weak, but Biden was still the best punching bag in the lot. I 100% agree. As decrepit as he was coming, as crazy the things that he was saying, it was hard to watch, but still, he was still a good enough of a liar to get by and to get people to thinking that he was still capable of doing the job. But the debate, I think, and I'll be quite frankly here, I watched the debate, and I may be crazy for saying this, and I watched the debate literally 2 weeks after the fact, and I heard everyone saying how bad the debate was, how bad it was. And I watched them like, well, I mean, he wasn't really that bad. I mean, and the reason why I say that is because I've seen him do so much worse, shaking empty hands at my alma mater, A&T, doing, I mean, just saying the dumbest things, and I've seen them all, and so I was expecting something of that level, and it wasn't. We didn't get that. We got some meandering and so forth, and it looked bad and everything. I get it, but I guess I was so keen on seeing something outlandish, I really didn't. But I think the key thing is everyone outside of political wonks like myself who's seen a lot of this footage prior to and much worse, the rest of the world, your people who watch, TV and believe it, and watch CNN and MSNBC and and just don't think anything about politics, saw for the first time a decrepit old man who can't do the job, who can't even answer questions with any kind of clarity. But that is what did him in. And that's what the Democrats were like, oh no, we have to do something. And after 4 years of gaslighting us, saying that this guy was awesome, he's incredible, what Kamala Harris said, defending this guy. He can do his job, whatever, but the fact of the matter is he couldn't, and we all know that he couldn't. Well, at least I knew, but the mass majority of people didn't know. And the Democrats certainly knew, but they knew that you didn't know. And then when they found out that you did know, that's when it became a problem. That's when the gaslighting stopped. That's when they gave the narrative to the media, go after Biden, let's get him out of there. And that's when all the cards came crumbling down. I don't believe Joe Biden had any intention at all to leave. I believe Joe Biden, his wife, was the one who was holding on for dear life at the end. Who knows? Joe might have been bought out or something. I don't even think he was able to even save face, really. He didn't get a chance to even save face, but it is what it is. He's out, and now we have that. So David Hathcock says, much love. Thank you so much. And W says here, he wasn't all there 4 years ago either. 100%. 100%. We were being gaslit for 4 years. Okay. And so Leaning Lamp says, for the first time, I agree with AOC. Wow. And I will say something about AOC. AOC, I mean, yes, she is. I mean, we get that, right? But AOC is one of these people who believes what she believes. She's not like Chuck Schumer, who just says whatever. He's not a socialist. He's not. But he is a sellout. He doesn't care. He'll do whatever to the highest bidder. Joe Biden isn't. He's not an outright commie. He just isn't. I'm sorry, he's not. But he just isn't. If you go back and look at it, he was against illegal immigration, against gay marriage, and all this stuff. All that stuff. He was a war hawk. And so he's a nationalist. He just believed in taxes, tax and spend. Back in the 80s and the 90s, that's what it was, tax and spend. But the Democrat Party got taken over by these radical commies, these socialist commies. And I'm sure I will concede maybe a few of these people, the Chuck Schumers and so forth, maybe they have come over to feel that way. But I don't believe that Nancy Pelosi is a communist. I just don't. You can't convince me. But Either it's a crime of commission or a crime of omission. So I guess against myself as an argument, she's a communist by omission because she's not standing up for what's right. These people are sellouts, selling our country out to the highest bidder. And that's what I have a problem with. And they don't care. They do not care. It's through political expediency. And that's what I hate the most. So let's see here. So Jacob Mouton, if I said that correctly, it's crazy he refused to step down. Failed assassination attempt, and now he steps down. I may bring that up on Rumble later, that you're leaning into something that I'm reading between the lines, and I'm with you on that, 100%. I don't know, seems crazy, but it's a coincidence. Just scared to think how bad it could get if Trump now doesn't win. 100%. Like I said before, I think World War II, I think the Civil War, I think the foundation of this country when you had, Thomas Paine write something called The Crisis, when George Washington was like, we're done, guys. If we don't do something now, this country is lost. We're in the first year of the war. We almost got destroyed in Manhattan in the first major battle. We almost lost outright. I did a live stream on the Battle of Manhattan. Incredible. The Brooklyn Crossing, incredible. A providential type deal. It's just as bad as that, guys. And Trump nearly being hit with that bullet was providential. 100%. I'm gonna play a clip from if I can find it. I'm gonna play it. I'll maybe cue it for the break. It's with Newt Gingrich. He said this a day after the assassination attempt, how that was a providential moment in our history. And there's so much you can look at in our history where things just happen. I mean, the Battle of Midway was incredible providence. If anything had gone wrong there, we could have lost California. We definitely would have lost Hawaii. That was because the entire Pacific Fleet would have been gone. And we didn't have the support. They were over in Europe doing everything else. They couldn't get them over there in time to defend two fronts that way. And I can go on to Civil War. There's tons of providential stuff there as well. So we'll get into that in a second. I'm going to take a quick break here. I'm going to take a break of about, let's see here, guys. Let's say, let's say 4 minutes. Okay, I'm going to take a 4-minute break, cue up this video, and we're going to get into the 1968 election and how it mirrors today. My name is Kyle Suggs. This is the Kyle Suggs Show. I will see you guys in about 4 minutes.
All right, everyone, we are back. My name is Kyle Suggs. This is the Kyle Suggs Show. We've been discussing Kamala Harris, and we've been discussing Joe Biden dropping out of the race. And I will say that I am a little bit surprised that he did drop out. But again, I underestimated the fact that globalism has to win out here. And the people who want to keep globalism in place, it's all about war with them. And what Jocko just said, I hope I pronounced your name right. He's leading into something there that's really important. So he says he doesn't have Rumble, but I'm going to stick around. And when I stop on this particular program, it's a free site. So if you go, I'll put a link here for you guys. I think I have it here as a banner. Do I have it here? Let me see, guys. Yeah, so if you, that's not what I want to talk about. Okay, that's not it either. Cancel. So here it is. So I brought that up before. So Corey Convertore was the one gentleman who lost his life at the Trump rally. So I did that on our live stream. So I had it up there. I'll just talk to it now real quickly. It's a total tragedy. And what Trump did during the convention speech was just fabulous. He had his uniform, his fireman coat and hat, helmet. He's a fire chief. And he went over there, and I believe it was totally spontaneous. He kissed the helmet and paid honor to him. Did a moment of silence. I thought it was very, very moving. And it just shows you the stakes we're in, guys. I had VIP access to a Trump rally about a month ago. I didn't go. I couldn't have had a conflict, but I would have gone. I would have been there behind Trump. Now, nothing happened that particular one, but my wife was at one where she was in VIP backstage behind him. So the point is that this gentleman here who lost his life could have been any one of us as Americans. And it was an attack on all of us as Americans. And people who don't see that are just totally something else. So I mentioned this. I'll move over there maybe in the second hour, whenever I move over, whenever we're done here. And I'll discuss that comment by Jocko there. And to get to Rumble, you don't have to have. Do you have to have an account on Rumble to watch videos? Because on YouTube you don't. But it's rumble.com/The Conservative Take, and we're on X as well right now. X.com/TCT_USA. I'll put this up again toward the end. So right now, before I get into the 1968 election and how that parallels to what's going on today, I'm going to show a clip here with Newt Gingrich, a guy that I was supporting when he was running for president. When he dropped out, ran out of money, I moved over to Herman Cain. He was my next choice, and he didn't make it either. And then Huckabee, I believe, was running as well, and so we didn't get any of those candidates, but we ended up getting John McCain. Oh, gosh, what a nightmare he was. But anyway, so here we go. We have this is Newt Gingrich on Fox News about a day or so after the assassination attempt on President Trump.
Of a presidential moment. If he had turned to look at that big screen, and when he was turned, the bullet would have hit him here. When he turned back, it hit him here. That's how close he came to being killed. And I think we need to understand that this was providential, and he reacted appropriately. But I also will tell you, he has been vilified by Joe Biden and the Democrats and the left wing more than any president since Abraham Lincoln. And this was a political act. It was a deliberate act. And as you know, because we've talked about it off air, I've said for 4 months that when all the legal baloney fails and when they begin to realize he is going to win, that violence is the next thing because they're that desperate.
They are that desperate. They're that desperate. And Newt Gingrich is right on the money there. And Newt Gingrich is a historian by nature. I've read several of his books. He has some really good books about the Revolutionary War and about Civil War. Some of them are fiction. They're like situational fiction. And some of them are actual accounts of real history. But he has a real knack for bringing through the providential or God intervening in this nation, in our history, and preserving us. And I think if you look at that day, and I'm not one of these people who, I am a very spiritual man. I'm a Christian. I'm a born again Christian. I believe the Bible cover to cover, but I just hesitate on miracles per se. I believe that God intercedes in our life, in our world, supernaturally, because He can suspend physics and all that stuff and interject in miracles. But I am not really one to quickly say that's a miracle. I just acknowledge that they do happen. But to say that's a miracle, I'm not going to go that far. But I'll tell you one thing, it sure looked like one. It absolutely looked like one. Absolutely. And then I even go as far as say the flag that was hurled up into would look like an angel prior to him speaking. I don't know, guys. I mean, that's something we can talk about. But what we do know that there are some things that have happened in this country, especially in 1776 in particular, that there's no other way to look at it other than it being providential. George Washington himself should have been killed a few years prior to the Revolutionary War because he was, running a scout back and forth during the French-Indian War, and he was shot through his coat and through his hat, and I believe his horse was shot down a couple times, and he survived that. There's a book called Bulletproof. It's by Wall Builders. They have it out there. I have that. I got that for Christmas. I actually, it's an audio book. I actually listened to it. It's fantastic, and it's corroborated by not only the people that saw it, but the actual people that shot him. Because a few years later, they actually came and visited him, the Native Americans, and were like, "Dude, we stopped shooting at you because we didn't want to waste any bullets on you." And they actually met him about 20 years later and confirmed that story. So it's just fascinating. But let's get into the election of 1968. And so here's some key points here. So here we have here. Let me get back to my screen here. Okay, so anyway, so one of the key things in the 68 was that the Democrat Party was very, very much divided by various aspects. One, the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a major issue back then. There was movements across this country. Now, I wasn't alive at the time, but it was a really hostile time because we had war correspondents going in there with the military and showing. Okay, my wife is telling me something right now. Well, I'm having a little bit of emergency at home here. We have some chickens and we have a raccoon right now. Picked up on the camera now is attacking our chickens. So I'm hoping my wife will take care of that. I hope I don't have to stop this live stream to go over there and take care of it. But yeah, we're having a situation with our chickens being taken out. So that's why I paused there for a second. But anyway, but yeah, the Vietnam War was really, really divisive because for the first time in American history, you had footage, real time nearly, of our troops being killed. And quite frankly, the Vietnam War, even though I get why we were there, the tactics of the war, I can honestly say, just were not the best. Right? I had a professor of mine in high school, a Vietnam veteran. I was in high school at the time. And I asked him about it. I said, Mr. So-and-so. I said, so tell me about the war. Can you tell me something about the Vietnam War? Because I don't know much about it. And he said, he was there infantry. a true American patriot, a black man, French teacher of mine, and those of you who know me know exactly what I'm talking about. He said this to me, and I'll never forget. He said, you can't go into a war or battle and not take land. He told me that. I didn't know what he was talking about. And so the rules of engagement were such that we couldn't do that. We couldn't take land. We couldn't take. Okay, let me take a quick break out. I gotta take this. Hold on. I'm gonna take a quick break here, guys. My wife's calling me. Sorry about that. I gotta deal with that first. So let me take a 2-minute break here. Sorry about that. This laptop's getting dead. So let's take. I'll see you guys back in 2 minutes. Come on, live stream. What's up? I think wait, you bring the gun? Oh, no, that's fine, man. Let's get it off. All right, I'm going back. I'm almost done.
We have a winner.
All right, guys. Sorry about that. So let's get back to this here. So the Vietnam War and all of that, taking land was something we should have done, didn't do, and the college campuses were literally on fire, and so that was a big issue for the DNC. At the time, it was Lyndon Baines Johnson was the president. And because of that pressure, he and the divided party, he announced in March, the last day of March, that he would not seek re-election. There's that famous clip where he says, I will not seek or I will not accept the nomination for your nominee for the President of the United States. And so this opened the door for the Democratic nomination process. And for those of you guys who don't know what a convention is or what that's about, so essentially, I'm not going to assume people know what this is. So what a convention is in general, what a convention is it's a organization that has a certain number of petitions and regulations that make them a viable entity to put forth a person onto a ballot because that's funded through the federal government, and thereby to do that you have to go through certain things. And being part of a political party that has all of those petitions and all that stuff in place can do it. So as long as you win the nomination of your particular party, then you will be on the ballot in the United States per the federal rules and regulations and statutes and all that stuff. So the party determines all that. And the way it particularly works is for every single state, they have what they call delegates based on your size. And to be a delegate, you have to pretty much be, well, a lot of it's back scratching, whatever, but you have to be a political insider within your particular state, county, whatever, district. And then you end up being nominated and elected through the process of your local conventions, county, and to your state, and then you get nominated for the national. And then these guys and gals come together on the floor and they do what they call a roll call, which says we're going to give our delegates to the nominee. And then that person is going to become the ticket bearer of the particular party. And so most of the time when you have a incumbent president, it's just a formality. You're going to pick the incumbent because you don't go against the president. If you've gone through the primary and the caucus process, then those delegates or those people are brought along with you, and then you bring them to convention. And if you have enough delegates per your party rules, you will also win the nomination. Now, in the case of the Democrat Party in 68, because you didn't have the incumbent there, because he was not there, what you had was an open convention. And so, and what made it even worse, well, at that point, you didn't have an open convention, really, because at that point you had Robert F. Kennedy, who was the brother of John F. Kennedy. He was running for the presidency. And I think he had just won the California primary. So he was pretty much going to get the nomination. Very popular candidate, young, vibrant, brother of a very loved president. He was the attorney general, and he got through the Cuban Missile Crisis. And he was just a very dynamic, smart individual. People liked him. But on June 5th, he was assassinated. And that led to the open convention, because now you have different factions of the Democratic Party. And like you have today, actually. So let's parallel that today. So let's parallel right now. You can obviously say the LBJ's withdrawal is a parallel to Biden withdrawing. And part of the reason why Biden's withdrawing is not only his health, but it's because I believe his policies with Palestine, his policies with Israel, he's really alienated a lot of the hardcore factions on that particular element. And so what the Democrat Party has done by going so far to the radical left, they've alienated all their major voting blocks. But the loudest and the most influential at this point in time are the radical left, but they're not enough really to carry a full majority. So he's got to play both sides, right? He's got to play both sides. So you saw what happened when the attack in Israel. You had one faction of the party is like, yeah, that's great. Go Hamas. But then a lot of the party was like, no, dog, I'm Jewish. Israel, the last I checked, was a sovereign country. And that's also I checked that they're really the only democracy over there. And so we should have some interest in that. So that split the party there. And then you have this whole thing with this whole women's bathroom and stuff like that. This whole hardcore issues with that splits the party up a little bit, because there's some common sense that people don't quite get. And then you have this whole thing with the illegal immigration, and particularly with the Black community, because the Black community, especially in these inner cities, in towns and cities and urban population centers like Chicago and Baltimore and the like, are having, even I'd say even Milwaukee and in Minnesota, areas up there as well, where illegal immigrants are taking the jobs of minorities, and they are coming across the border, and they are taking the jobs of people who have been there for generations, whose ancestors have bled, sweat, and died for said privileges. For these people who are coming over simply based on proximity, because they're close to Mexico, they can come over, or from other countries along the way. And they're doing that, but also many of them are causing problems from sucking up resources, tax dollars that no longer are available to people who pay taxes. And some of them, in some cases, are being put in hotels. They're being treated better than veterans, being treated better than American citizens. And so that's also splitting the party as well. You have the establishment Democrats who are like, who are more of the globalism type thing, who they want to win elections and they know this is the way of doing it, cheap labor, so to speak. But then you have the people who are, the blue dog Democrats, who are more leaning center right, but are still Democrat by culture and by family orientation and whatever. Maybe they don't like Trump, but they're still don't like that aspect of it. So there's various factions now within the Democrat coalition that don't play well together. That whole thing with AOC is a real thing. She's on the radical socialist side. And so she can't be woke enough. And so that's kind of the problem. So can Kamala Harris be woke enough? I don't think she can. And I don't think anyone can. But at the same time, she has other issues too with other things that she's brought to the table, like her failed immigration policies. So that's where I see this parallels quite nicely. Now, Robert F. Kennedy, we haven't seen anything like that yet, but it does open the field up. And I would say if a Hillary Clinton were to get in, I'd see that being a problem. I think there was going to be another faction, another party is going to come up and try and take that mantle from Kamala. But the problem with Kamala Harris, and this is what I was telling other people as well, and I want to say this and get this on record, is the fact that because she is a quote unquote woman of color, then it's very difficult. It's very difficult for them to remove her, because for them to do that, it's going to say, hey, well, you know what? Yeah, you know that whole DEI thing? Yeah, we were wrong about that. She is not the person that can do this job, regardless of what color she looks like. And so that's going to split the party up even further. So that's another potential faction that the Democrat Party is going to have to deal with in a similar fashion that they dealt with similar things back in '68. The Chicago Democrat National Convention, the Democratic National Convention, it was in Chicago in August of '68. And like it says here, it was marked by deep divisions within the party. Inside the convention hall, there were debates and disagreements with the party's platform, particularly regarding the Vietnam War. Now, I was remiss in telling you about after you get your nomination, all that stuff, they put together what they call a party platform. So a convention is more than just nominating a president. They do a bunch of stuff. It's like a big meeting for the party. It's like the Super Bowl, right? So they get together, and on presidential election years, it's the biggest of those because a president has to be nominated. And so they have a lot of subcommittee meetings. They have a lot of think tank sessions, training sessions, dinners, hobnobbing, that kind of stuff, dealing with lobbyists, dealing with the spin room and setting policy on the floor, and trying to drum up support. And if there's a situation where they want to get certain people the votes, they want to whip them up to vote for their candidate or their nominee. And so that's all part of it. But one of the biggest part of a convention is putting together the party platform. And one thing that I didn't say, I will say now, is that I hinted on it a little bit earlier, is that in 2016, Trump's party, well, the Republican Party, was not Trump's party. It wasn't. There's a bunch of bureaucrats, a bunch of Paul Ryans, Mitt Romneys, John McCain's, a bunch of rhinos, and that there were a few Tea Party people there, but they didn't really come together as a coalition at all, as a caucus at all. And so, they did Trump a big disservice on the wall and getting funding there. He had to go into military funding. He had to pull Abraham Lincoln and look at it like a war measure, which is why he was able to free the slaves. It was a war measure. And so Trump stood back and basically did an Abraham Lincoln and said, you know what? People coming across our border is an invasion. It's a war. As the executive in chief or the commander in chief over the armed forces, I have the right to go and defend that. He treated it like a war and invasion and got the funding to build the wall as a preventative measure. He should not have had to do that had he had a party of his own. Well, now, and getting to my point, in 2024, the MAGA agenda is now the MAGA agenda. It's Agenda 47, not to be conflated with Project 2025, which is what the Democrat Party was all up in the air about. Oh my gosh, Agenda 2025, whatever, it's the worst thing ever. But Trump was nearly assassinated, and I haven't heard anything really about that as a narrative yet. So I'm sure it will come back up at some point in time. But for now, it's been put down for the Kamala thing, for the Trump thing, for the convention. But the point is, back to my point, at the convention of the RNC, it became Trump's party officially. There's no more rhinos policies in there anymore. It's Trump's agenda, Trump's party. And down ballot, I think people were more afraid, not necessarily of Trump beating Biden, but of the down ballot seats that are going to get lost if Biden stayed on. And that kind of effect could wreak havoc on the Democrat Party, because if Trump were to go in there, not only with a mandate in terms of his number of elections and electoral college votes, which right now is looking well over 330, he'll also have the popular vote. And then he would have, let's say, a really nice majority in both the House and the Senate. Not necessarily veto proof, but enough oomph and enough substance, and through the force of his own will and the popular nature of Trump himself, and his ability to use the pulpit or his speeches as a bully pulpit. In other words, use the office to get forth his agenda. It would have been difficult for his agenda to not go through. And that's what Democrats did not want, because he could have undone a lot of different things there and maybe codified those into real law instead of just doing them through executive order, which can be done, undone very easily by the next president. Lastly, I'll say this. J.D. Vance was a great choice. At first, I wasn't sure, because I said on record that, hey, I thought Pence was a good choice. So I don't have a stake in this. I don't have an opinion. But I think he chose J.D. Vance because he's young, and because he's a MAGA hawk, and because he is a political policy wonk. He's the kind of guy who can go into a policy, into a 1,000-page document, into a 1,000-page bill, get into it, get into the minutia of it, make sense of it, because he's a lawyer from Yale, no less. He and his wife can do the same. I'm not sure if his wife wants to be involved in policymaking or looking at that kind of stuff, but he has that kind of mindset and intellect and worldview and worldview of this country, and he's hardcore MAGA. And I think he can do a big job to take cases like the Chevron case with the Supreme Court a few weeks ago, which basically said that the government can no longer say arbitrarily what regulations should be. It threw it back to the federal courts to let them decide, not the federal government give some arbitrary thing, so they can actually say, okay, you farmer who happen to be in Pango, I know you want to build grow a tree there, but because there's some microbes there, some snails that are in danger, you can't plant that tree because, well, we're the government and the EPA says you can't do it. So that was thrown out, and that's a huge thing. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, which what J.D. Vance could do. He was said to say this prior to Trump announcing his presidency. He said, look, what Trump should do is he should fire every mid-level bureaucrat in D.C. carte blanche, just fire them all. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. But then he said, and then what's going to happen is they're going to say, they're going to sue you, and they're going to win in court. And then when they win, Trump should pull a Andrew Jackson to say, okay, the Chief Justice made his ruling, now let him enforce it. I was like, dude, man, woo, when I saw that if that's the kind of guy we have as vice president, that's a great position to be in. And if he can pull it off from guts, then by all means, he will be a great choice, because he could be the kind of person young enough to legacy in MAGA for 12 years after, well, actually 16 years, you count the first term, but 12 years, 4 years to 28, and then he could take in, and then back-to-back terms, put that in. And I think it would take about 12 years to get the MAGA agenda to be something where it's real. And the next generation coming up of young boys and young men coming up are the most conservative generation since Reagan. And so that's that. So let's keep going here. I'm not going to keep going here much longer, guys. I know you think you guys will stick around as long as you have been. So here, why was the convention split? So the Vietnam War, the party was deeply divided over that. The anti-war factions against it, and they were supporting, clashing against those people who were in favor of Johnson and Humphrey, who were more moderates. They were more establishment. Also, the civil rights movement and the young people. Young people became really politically active back then, at that particular point in time. And civil rights movement was really huge, and there were more radical voices into the Democrat Party, challenging the traditional party leadership. Black Panthers come to mind, and a few others. And of course, the deaths of MLK and RFK left the party without two of its most influential leaders, even though MLK was Republican. We won't go there, but they were actually dealing with it from a civil rights issue. Democrats were trying to say that they were the party of civil rights. They actually really weren't. The Republicans were the ones that passed all the bills. Dirksen and those guys up on the Hill, those guys were the ones doing it. And so this is from ChatGPT, so that's wrong. But I see what they're saying, though. They attributed MLK because civil rights and all that stuff, so they felt that was part of it. And by the way, Malcolm X was part of that too. Malcolm X was not any fan of the Democrat Party. And then, of course, you have what we have today: establishment versus grassroots, or establishment versus, in this case, it would be, I don't know, actually. It would be the radical commies like AOC. And back then, there was a significant divide between the party establishment, which supported Humphrey, and the grassroots activists who favored a more radical change. And so in '68, the DNC epitomized the tumultuous political and social climate of the time, reflecting the broader conflicts and divisions within the American society. And the split and chaotic events significantly weakened the DNC, Democrat Party, contributing to Nixon's victory in '68. And so, time will tell, and I'm sure that I will be doing another video on this as we find out some more things here. But that's where we stand, and I would like to see what happens next. You see, Jekyll has a thing here. Let me see, read this first before I put it up. Very interesting. I kind of thought this too. Here's a theory. I think they're willing to throw this election. No way Trump can deport the 11 plus million plus illegals. So after 4 years, naturalized citizens can vote. Then we won't ever have to. Yeah, that puts a lot of risk on the globalists. I think they're going to throw their arms up eventually on this if they feel they just can't. I don't think Kamala Harris can pull it together. And I think what's going to prevent some other people from running is because they don't want to lose to Trump. He's so popular now that, yeah, you can run, maybe you could win, but if you lose, your political career is pretty much done. So I think what they're going to do now is they're going to try and get Roy Cooper to be the vice president. He's the governor of North Carolina. And my buddy, my friend, Mark Robinson, I mean, literally my friend, is the last I checked, he was leading in the polls. Let me see if he's leading the polls now. Let me pull this up. He was down 0.2% back in May. And there hasn't been a lot of polls in North Carolina. Yeah, it's still 0.2 Stein. So it's basically dead even. But there hasn't been a poll out since May 31st. So I think when the next poll comes out, I think Mark will be up by at least a point or two. And especially when Trump comes to speak to North Carolina, it's going to be a wrap. So Roy Cooper coming in to be the vice president with Kamala Harris, which, by the way, is going to make a lot of people mad because he's a white male. So that's going to divide the party even further. That's how crazy the left's gotten, the Democrats have gotten. But what he can do is he can maybe, I hate to say this, if Mark's watching this, we need to work on this, Mark, is that he's going to try and get Stein over the hump. And he could probably try and do that. If it's a close election, who knows? He could probably do that. And so that would be the theme to prevent the governor, Mark Robinson, from becoming governor of North Carolina. Because if he happens to become the governor of North Carolina, there's no stopping this guy. He can become president of the United States because he's the kind of guy with the kind of policies and the kind of backbone, the courage, the integrity. I've known him for I've known him since 2004. So he's a great guy, and I think he will make North Carolina into the Florida. I think he'll make Ron DeSantis' accomplishments in Florida look like nothing. I think he'll do way more in North Carolina because I just think he can do that. He's a great guy, and so with that kind of success out of North Carolina, the sky's the limit. He could be president of the United States. I've said that before, and so they want to stop him now if they can. And so Roy Cooper doing that would be the first thing to do that, and then the whole goal, to Jocko, to your comment there, I think they're going to try and protect the lower seats as best they can. They're going to lose the White House, but if they can protect the lower seats, they can kind of have a split Congress and give some pushback on Trump, maybe even impeach him again if they can. So that's probably what they're going to go for, politically speaking. I'll say more when I get on the Rumble in a few minutes here, but that's my thoughts there. And since I'm mentioning that, let me go ahead and bring this up here. Let me bring this up. I want to show you guys where I'm going to be in a few minutes here. So I'll be over at Rumble. I'd probably say about, let's see, maybe about 12:15, 10 minutes from now. And I can't believe it's already Monday. So that's what we're going to do. Anyway, guys, so thank you so much for hanging out with me today. That's where you can get a hold of us on YouTube, Truth Social, Rumble, on Locals if you want to help contribute us there. Instagram. Actually, Instagram is, yeah, that's right. That's correct. And X, that's right as well. So here are our supporters who've been with us for many years. Thank you guys for supporting this channel for so long. We crossed over 200,000 subscribers about a month or so ago, and I'd like to get this channel to 1 million as soon as possible. And the more people who are with us, the more we can influence them. And we're going to be doing some other things too. I'm going to be announcing some major changes with the Conservative Take. We're going to be bringing up a private off YouTube, off of the, let's say, non-conservative friendly platforms. We're going to build our own, and we're going to have people go there, and we're going to build it into something that I don't have to worry about being demonetized or anything like that here. So that's coming as well. And with that, guys, I'm going to leave this up here, and I'm going to give us a little bit of a break, play some music on the way out, and we'll see you over there on Rumble at about 12:15. So I'll leave this on the screen here, and hopefully you guys can do this here as well. Let's do that. There we go. That was good. All right, so we'll keep that there. And guys, I'll see you guys on Rumble in about, actually, I'll keep it on X too. So we'll be on Rumble and on X. So on X and Rumble. So see you guys there about 12:15. And thank you guys so much. Thank you, David, WJ, Meaning Lamp, Jocko. Thank you so much. Clinton, everyone here. And until next time, guys, I will see you guys in the next one.